All right, we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. This morning we were at a peace walk. It was so inspiring. We had a little bit of our next steps discussion and our final discussion of the week, where everyone expressed essentially their main takeaways from working this week and individual next steps. We wrapped that, and what we realized was the presentations last night were cut a little bit short because not short. We went till 9. We kept to the schedule last night. We reported from 7 to 9, but we didn't finish the report. So this afternoon we're broadcasting just to finish the report, so that anyone that wanted to get the full information about the work that we've done this week during planning week would have it here, and that we would create a full record of our work, which is what we promised we would do. So Adam is going to do the report for the market for new businesses and the economic benefits and entrepreneurship opportunities. And then Maya is going to report the synthesis on goals and strategies, goals and objectives and strategies. So Adam, take it away. And you're good. I think you just press space bar to advance. Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Adam Cook, and if you've been around over the course of the week, we've likely met, or you've likely seen me around our workspaces.
And you can still face the room, too. You can cheat a little bit, but it's okay.
I am going to take over for our project team partner, Bob. Bob gives planning group. Bob put these slides together. And Paul and Bob and I have worked together for many years, so I can't do Bob justice the way he typically gives one of his Stimliner presentations. And if you missed his earlier presentation, which I believe he gave Tuesday evening, that's all on the archive. Please go back and stream that because it's really a good one. But I want to walk through these summary slides again and maybe hopefully pad that with some additional conclusions that we have a team have gleaned over the week, and I know Bob is back there putting the next touches on his stage of his market analysis. This bird's not working. Let's try it.
I think this has happened before. It's because right now it is in the
okay
StreamYard, and I just have to dial us back into the PowerPoint. Now it should work.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. If you're familiar with local history and you've done any searching, you've seen this postcard or this photograph. I believe this was taken somewhere around 1965, 1966. Again, you can see just how vibrant the downtown retail was at one point in time in Benton Harbor. Naturally, you had the Woolworths. So you had what at that time was kind of the equivalent of maybe a Walmart or something like that. There was probably also a Kresge's, and people have talked over the course of the week about the J.C. Penney and about the Sears store that was downtown. So there were major national retailers located on the street, but really what filled in all of those gaps were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of locally owned independent businesses that were going everywhere from building materials and supplies, lumber, probably cards, books, gifts, music, stationery, you name it, they were down here. And we do have a pretty solid, clear record of what was on these streets when, if we go back to our business directories and Sanborn maps, and they're really interesting to see just how vibrant and dynamic that economy was, and how dynamic that economy is on main streets that are functioning at a high level today. So when we look at the numbers, Benton Harbor in 2019, $500 million spent in retail in the region. One of the things Bob has stressed, and what I would agree with, is when we think of this from an economic perspective, in terms of who's spending money and when businesses are taking money on a regular basis, what's the trade area? Which means that if you locate in or around Benton Harbor or St. Joe, what customers are coming in the doors on a daily basis. And the bulk of those customers are going to come from really within a 10, 15, maybe a 20-minute drive, but usually something less than that. This is still a pretty compact region, even though there's Benton Harbor, there's St. Joe, and there's the townships. It always surprises me just how quickly you get from one end to the other, because it's still very geographically small, even though some of the land use patterns are sprawled out. What that means is that you're one trade area. You act as one trade area. So opening up a store in Benton Harbor means that you have access to that market from the townships, from St. Joe, and then of course anybody that comes in as a visitor. The visitor market is really more like icing on the cake. What pays the bills is the local market, the customers that are coming in on a weekly basis or even on a daily basis, depending on the type of the store. And so within that market area, you're looking at a population of 50,000 people. The average income over all of those 50,000 is about $75,000. We put things in that perspective, we see that it's actually a very strong market. Workers spending in this market $80 million a year. However, the retail leakage, and that's kind of a fancy term we use in the sort of market analysis industry for the gap between, how many people live in a particular area and where that money gets spent. That's 88%. What that means is that a Benton Harbor residents that live in Benton Harbor, 88% of their dollars, so for every dollar that comes out of their pocket for goods and services, 88 cents of that dollar is being spent physically outside of Benton Harbor. And it's because, as we know, the community is lacking in a wide variety of essential goods and services. As one thing Bob likes to say is, he noticed, and he didn't fail this time, right? Bob noticed that everybody in Benton Harbor eats 3 times a day, gets hungry 3 times a day, and wears clothes, So there's a market here. It goes without saying that, that market's not being served well. When you look at categories, what could some of those categories be that are underserved? I mentioned apparel, but you've got furniture, things like sporting goods, books. There's a neat little book stand there, actually, that I went and took a look at there in the, Paul, do you remember what the name of it?
4K?
No, right behind where we had lunch today.
Yeah, Mason Jar.
Mason Jar. And that artisan market. So there are, small scale entrepreneurs that are doing these things already in the community. And what this does is this just verifies that, this is the right time and the right place for people to be making these impacts. I think we can do a lot more with books. Maybe that bookstore there one day will grow into a formal storefront bookstore. I think what Bob is saying, and I think what I would concur with, is that the market potential is there for that to happen. It's not just retail stores, it's restaurants. The market can support 6 to 10 new restaurants. And, those restaurants could be anything from, kind of a casual, more coffee shop kind of format, all the way to a, standard sit down, get table service format. Overall, 25 to 30 new businesses that would generate $16 million in new sales. You can drill down a little bit into this and think about some categories. So we talk about restaurants. We're also talking about things like ice cream, bakery, coffee. And anecdotally, how many times have we heard this week people miss having an ice cream store? Not just in Benton Harbor in general, but in their neighborhood. That's part of that neighborhood life. Part of that neighborhood life is having an ice cream store, within walking distance. Part of that life is having your barber shop right there, down on the corner. Because that's not just a place where you get your hair cut in silence. I mean, that's a social event, right, to go there. That's another community. That's just a third space. And the same goes for beauty salons too. Maybe not as enjoyable is, although that kid seems to really be enjoying his dental checkup. I don't know, who took that picture. But still, we need these services. We need dentists in our neighborhoods. We need the doctors, the general physicians, offices like that in our neighborhoods. And we need other services too, insurance services, the state farm agent, the financial services. So not just banks, credit unions, but those individual people, those individual professionals that might be a CPA and help you out with your taxes, or might help you out with just some basic financial planning, estate planning. These are all the things, these are all the parts of that ecosystem that constitutes, a thriving, vibrant town. And these are all services that we need. And I think, some people take for granted because in other communities, you might see a State Farm agent or you might see an Edward Jones on every corner. But they're absolutely necessary. And to not have any is definitely an issue. I think the one that we've heard more though than any of those things that I just mentioned is a laundromat. I think that James, you said it at one point this week, sum something up in a word, and you used the word laundromat. And just as important as wearing clothes and having a place to buy clothes and shop for clothes, you're not just going to wear those clothes once. You need to get those clothes clean. And I think that's the one thing that's resonated with us over and over and over again is we need to be focused on things at that level. Where can those types of retail and services go? Well, they can go into sort of corner stores. There were a lot of corner stores in Benton Harbor at one time. And as we drive around our neighborhoods, as we drive down Empire, as we drive down Pipestone, as we drive down Colfax, we can see buildings that very obviously functioned as corner stores. And they weren't built to be corner stores. As a matter of fact, Paul, I think it was on Broadway yesterday when we drove by, and it's obvious there was a house that was built probably in the 19th century, and then a box was put on the front probably in the early 20th century that was definitely a retail oriented box. And this ability for a property owner to do that at a small scale, develop a retail operation that was needed, where their trade area wasn't maybe the region, their trade area was their immediate neighborhood, anything within a 5-minute walk. And when you had homes that were dense, block after block after block, there were enough households in a 5-minute walk to support a small store. So Bob's showing you something like a market basket, but what's the equivalent of that in terms of providing fresh food, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, just a basic range of grocery items and a basic range of other household items. Maybe some things that might otherwise you have to go all the way to Lowe's. Maybe you need just a basic screw, or maybe you need a screwdriver, some basic tool, basic hardware item. And to think about having to drive down into Benton Township, deal with all the traffic, park at Lowe's, walk, a mile through the parking lot in the store just to get that one little item and then go all the way back. Well, guess what? You're not going to do it. You're going to put it on your to-do list next time you're out there, and then you're going to forget about it. And then those types of things never happen. If it's right up the street, you're going to do it right when you think about it. And that actually expands that market. So when we're looking at spending numbers, we're just looking at spending as it is today. But having that factor added in of convenience of having these things owned by your neighbors and within a 5-minute walk, you're going to make purchases and not put them off. So I think this is what I've been touching on, right, which is the local element, that there are opportunities for local Benton Harbor entrepreneurs to groom these businesses, to grow these businesses, and to locate these businesses, in the neighborhood. So again, that's 25 to 30. And they're all sizes. We talked about the categories. I know Bob is going to be looking deeper into which specific categories might have a little bit more demand than others. But I think there's a pretty broad base of daily needs that are being underserved. This is Mike Campbell, our team member's great rendering of a, Paul, is this?
This is a resort. Todd was talking last night about potentially a casino resort.
Okay.
There's been talks about a resort on Riverview Avenue in the past, and we wanted to show what something like that could look like. Interesting. I think it's beautiful. I think from an architectural perspective too, it looks really good. Something like this can also, be a support for that retail infrastructure, even if it's attracting people from out of.
Also, sure. And then the old ICB bank area would be a perfect spot for that. Tear that building down, resort right there. That would be a land.
Yeah, or whether they'll like build an apartment or hotel or whatever that was, it's already, the interest is set up for, that too, because it's more of a, it's a single entry.
Yeah. The old capital state.
These are great ideas. I think one of the things about, talking to Mike while he was working on this rendering, I think one of the things that's really important to notice about this design, now I'm getting a little I don't want to get too much off topic, but what's really important is when you think about things like resorts and casinos, and the ones that you visited, you know, think about how they're designed. Most of them are designed to really turn their backs to the communities in which they sit. I'm not saying all of them are, but a lot of them are. If you think about even some of the casinos that you've been to Detroit, right? They're walled off from the street. You access them because you're just driving in as a visitor on the freeway. You park in a structure and you access them from the interior. You know, something like this is really designed to play part of the role of, you know, buildings in a civic space. You notice how it's very open on the ground floor. There are big transparent windows. It's a place that just by the mere way it's laid out and the way the architecture is done, it's welcoming to people that live up the street from it, and it's welcoming to people coming in from other places. And I think that's very important and something we need to keep our eye on in a larger design sense when we're thinking about how we do retail and new businesses. So it looks like that is the last of my slides, and I think I'm going to turn it over now to Maya to talk about vision, goals, objectives, and strategies.
All right. My name is Maya Baker. I'm a graduate student at the University of Michigan studying urban and regional planning, and I am an intern for McKenna. We have been here all week talking to folks about what they want to see. We've been talking to a lot of leaders in the community, whether or not they have a title making them a leader in the community, or just there's someone who wants to dedicate their time and their efforts and their energy to creating a plan for the future of Benton Harbor. We want to create a plan that empowers the city of Benton Harbor, provides opportunities for the people of the city of Benton Harbor, and we want to plan for physical structures that can improve the quality of life of the people in Benton Harbor. Physical structures and programming and events and activities. So these are just a few that we have filtered down because we only have so much time and we only have so much space to talk about these things, but we have tried our best to collect all of the objectives and visions and goals of things that we can do for this plan for Benton Harbor. And we broke these down into, well, let's start with the vision statement. We have a draft vision statement, and it's based on a previous plan. But as we go through this, I want to just say we have a vision statement now, but we want to be constantly changing and editing that as we go through. This is the beginning of a year of planning for Benton Harbor. And so this vision statement will not look the same a year from now that it looks right now. Right now it says that we have, so these are our vision. We're going to get our vision statements from these things. And we have 7 categories that we'll talk about. The first category is art. The city of Benton Harbor will continue to foster creative enterprise through education, exhibition, and celebration by developing and investing in local grown talent and welcoming artists from outside of Benton Harbor, from the Midwest and beyond, to share in the beauty of the city and the region. As we've been here, we've known there's so much talent in Benton Harbor. There's so much talent here, and there's so much beauty here. As I was driving into the city, and just the greenery and the lake and the water, like we'll get into the waterways and like everything later, but it's a beautiful city, and the art that is here already is so beautiful, and we know that there's a lot more capacity for more art, and we want to foster that creativity. So exactly, we want to continue to foster this creativity. And so we want to use art, Benton Harbor art, to foster aesthetics and community celebration. So in order to have this art to create aesthetics and community celebration, we'll have public art as a form of cultural expression that uplifts the community. Art is something that gives communities spirit and represents their spirit, and that's how we can use the art for that. So public art just makes a place more alive, and establishes a unique sense of place. So we want art that isn't just art that we got from somewhere that we're plopping down in the middle of the city. It's representative of Benton Harbor as a whole, and it's representative of its people. Not just in the major downtown area or anything. We want art all over, neighborhood beautification, and on every scale. So you have art at the intersection and the roundabouts. You have art along the road and on walls and murals and on the streets. But then you also just encourage people and allow people to have beautiful homes and gardens, and foster people and encourage people to decorate their spaces. That's why we're having this talent show, this showcase this summer, so that people can express themselves creatively. Garden art and more trees are just ways of making the city a more artful place. The next, and this is more about the impacts of art, which I kind of talked about as I was going through. So we only have so much time, but we want to just benefit curb appeal. When people come into Benton Harbor, people are visiting Benton Harbor, we want them to be impressed. We want them to see beautiful things and tell other folks about it, and want more people. And we want you, a neighbor, to be walking down your street and feel a sense of pride for what you're seeing. Design is related to art, but it's more about the way that things are physically laid out, the way that things work together, the way that things can have multiple uses. So you might think of design as being art, but it's really just about how we create things and shape things to work for us. And we want design that puts people first. I think for a really long time, people have done design to put, I don't know, other things first, money first, power first, but we're putting people first. Design and practice. So design is for creative problem solving. We want to foster a strong sense of design and purpose in everything that we do. When we're building new buildings, we want them to be laid out in a way that works for people. We want them to be designed in a way that is accessible for those with disabilities. We want our buildings to work so that people can have yards, and so that people can have a place to live and be happy. We also want to, we know that Benton Harbor has a long history of industry and a future of commercial and industrial work. And there is a real economic driver, an economic benefit that we can get from linking industry professional designers that currently exist in the city, outside of the city, or that want to invest in the city, to education. So our students know how they can use their creativity to benefit their city. Because it's one thing to have ideas, it's another thing to know how to put them in place. And linking industry and people and professionals who do this for a living to our students are a way that we can help them shape their communities as we go on, and empower themselves. And just more of just having things that are functional and aesthetically pleasing. It ties into art. We want walkability. So these are things we've heard. We've heard from people that they want to see, they want to have. They've been to other cities that have these things, or they've been in parts of the city that have these things, or the city used to have these things, or it was just easier to have these things before. Walkability. You want to be able to walk. You don't have to drive to where you want to be. Not only because some people don't have cars, some people, for whatever reason, some people aren't able to drive cars. We have kids that can't drive cars, but we don't want them to be holed up in one place. We want them to be able to walk where they want to go. You want to be able to walk to the grocery store if you just remember that you need milk. You want to be able to walk to the ice cream shop so that by the time you get home, the ice cream cone is gone, or it'll melt. And we want and just things to be closer together. There's a lot of open space. We want to fill those open spaces with life and with things to do. Quality, durable, sustainable housing. Design has a lot to do with the way that our housing is built and the way that our buildings are. And we want them to continue to be sturdy structures, safe structures that people can live in and be proud of and be safe in. We also want to protect existing open space in nature, like parks. We'll talk about parks a little bit more later, but we want to have beautiful open spaces that we can enjoy and be healthy in. When we have the opportunity to reuse buildings, there are so many beautiful old buildings in Benton Harbor, so many buildings that people put their heart and soul into, and if we have the opportunity to reuse them for something, we want to be able to do that. Having more activity on the street and having open windows in the front of your house, there are ways that we can make sure that there's activity, that there's eyes on the streets. Eyes on the streets means people are paying attention, people are watching, people are living through the streets as they go, and that makes things safer place to be because there's more people around and more people are paying attention. We want there to be space for kids. We want children to feel like they belong in the city because they are a part of the city as well. And we want to have accessibility for people with disabilities because we know that there are a lot of people with mobility challenges and other sorts of disabilities in the city of Benton Harbor, excuse me. We want to encourage redevelopment for housing. Specifically, we really want to drive home, and everyone that we've spoken with has really told us like new housing. We just need new housing. We need more housing and new housing and high quality housing to people to live in. But when we put in new housing, we don't just want to plop a house down in the middle of the street and just call it good and just assume that it works. We want to make sure that it fits the neighborhood. It blends in. It's nice and it goes with what the city has been, the beautiful nature of the city has been over the past 100 years, 150 years. There are gaps in the housing market. Missing middle housing is, we built a lot of single family homes, one after the other, cookie cutter, and we built a lot of big giant apartment buildings where you just got blocks and blocks of units. We want to fill in those gaps. There's so many things in between. So you can have a smaller home, you can have duplexes where you have multiple people living in the same place. There's opportunities for ownership there where you own one unit and then you have someone else rents your next door unit from you. Then you get some income from that, and you help pay your mortgage with that. I'm going to fill in gap, and then we want to just maintain, upgrade, rehabilitate existing homes. We want to provide people support so that they are able to rehabilitate their existing homes that might right now be unlivable or falling apart or difficult, but they're not too far gone that they need to be demolished. We can upgrade those. And for business, in commercial areas, businesses in neighborhoods need to serve their residents, and they also need to serve the region. We want people from nearby to come in and spend their money here. And we want them to feel invited, and we want to have visitors coming in and telling other people, oh, you should come to Benton Harbor. There was a really great restaurant there. There was a really great store there, and I really had a really great time. And there are ways that design can impact that. We want the buildings to be laid out in a way that works for that. I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. So best work. We want Benton Harbor to have the best. We want more jobs, and we want more economic stimulation in the city of Benton Harbor. We want to create opportunities for growth for new people, to bring in new businesses into the city, for people who live in the city to be able to start their own businesses. We want people to come in and spend their money so that people of Benton Harbor can benefit from that. So we want to have equitable economic opportunity. We want to continue to help people build skills so that they can help themselves, so that they can create their own businesses, so that they can get new jobs, so that they can find places to work and be a part of their community and help their community in new ways and bring in money for themselves and for their families. So we have there are a lot of ways to do that. Job fairs. You would teach people entrepreneurial skills, how to market themselves and how to stand up for themselves and how to support themselves, and meet new people, network, know who to talk to. We also need to invest in infrastructure because we're not going to have new businesses coming in if the infrastructure of the city isn't capable of supporting them. So investing in new infrastructure to help the people of Benton Harbor and so that there's new economic development, and having more public services. Public services always need to happen, and they are a great source of jobs. Public services are, if you want to help your community and you want to get paid to do it, public services is a great way to do it, and we need to have more resources of the city to be able to have those jobs available to people. And we want to, we connect schools and employers. We have more vocational skill building and trade schools, local job programs, apprenticeships, and mentorships so that young people have the opportunity to grow by learning from their elders. Community networks, you're only as good as the people you know. Whoever is able to help you out, yourself and the people you know are able to help build each other up. So just career training, workshops, mentorship, fostering those skills, developing entrepreneurial skills is the way to go. And then creating sustainable jobs, downtown and neighborhoods as job centers. There are places to work in all parts of the city. As Adam was saying about all of the new potential for businesses in the city, this is where the jobs come from. We want people to come to the businesses that Benton Harbor residents are working at and enjoy them and give their money, and then they can help us build the city more, make a buck, as someone was saying yesterday, as Todd was saying yesterday. We want to utilize, right a few miles outside of the city is amazing agriculture that has been a part of the city forever. Like Market Street used to lead to a market, a fruit market. And we want to have that connection to agriculture. And then we also have this amazing resource right here, which is Lake Michigan and St. Joseph River and the Pawpaw River and all of these access to maritime industries and waterways. And you might be thinking, oh, I have no idea about any of these things. How am I supposed to have a job in these things but that's where that skill training and connection and making connections outside of the city of Benton Harbor, but also within the city of Benton Harbor comes from. And now we're going into best waterways. Not every city has Lake Michigan right outside their door. Most areas along Lake Michigan are homes, and there's not that many cities right up against Lake Michigan. But you have that opportunity to work with that and invite people into the city to enjoy the lake and enjoy your businesses and your people and your culture. So utilizing the waterways as a real source of economic vitality, community access, and you want also to be able to enjoy the waterways yourselves as citizens. It's healthy, it is beautiful, it is enriching. So the waterways, as I was saying, public health and wellness, you can recreate, you can have fun, you can access the water, you can walk along the water, there are so many games and activities and things to do. We will need to make sure to protect the waterways as climate change becomes a bigger and bigger issue. We know that the water levels are going to rise. We know that flooding could be a concern. And we've worked with Ox Creek folks from Ox Creek who see that we have this creek here that a lot of people don't even know exists because it's kind of covered up and there's garbage and there's a lot of coverage, and it used to be more something that people were able to access more, but it's kind of been covered up over the years. So we want to have infrastructure in order to be resilient as climate change becomes an issue, flooding is a concern, and we want to protect the waterways from contamination. We've heard a lot of stories of folks who remember living and being with the water and playing in the creek and playing in the lake and growing up and working on the river, or their father worked on the river, or someone came to town because they got a job in shipping, and so maritime businesses, community acts, waterways have a big impact on the city. I'm not sure how much time I have, so
You are good. 15 more minutes
Okay.
if you need it. You might not.
Okay.
You're making good progress.
Okay, great. So there's a lot to talk about in terms of waterways, in terms of our infrastructure, protecting the waterways, continuing to protect the waterways from erosion, protecting the coastlines. Stormwater is something that needs to be a concern. You don't want to have flooding all the time, and we know that there are going to be more severe weather events in the future. We have to preserve the lake, not only for the sake of environmentalism, because that's important, but also because it is an asset to the community and it is an economic resource. There are a lot of games and activities and things that people want to see along the lake that we wouldn't have if something happened, if it became contaminated or the beaches disappeared. So we want to leverage the waterways for community benefit. The people of Benton Harbor want to leverage the waterways for community benefit. We want to have neighborhood access to the waterways so that you, the Benton Harbor resident, are someone who benefits from this asset. We want to have housing near the waterways so you can see it as you go about your day, so that you have, you can see so you can walk along it. That's an access point that doesn't really exist, but Ox Creek wants to put a trail, or the Ox Creek project wants to put a trail along the creek so that you have more ways of getting along, and we want to put access across the creek so that you can get from one side of the creek to the other without having to drive all the way around. We want to have recreation on the waterways. Recreation on the waterways for the people of Benton Harbor. Recreation on the waterways for the people of Benton Harbor to make money. There are a lot of businesses, water skiing, like water activities, swimming, beach going. In the winter, there is skiing that, well, I guess it doesn't have to do with the waterfront, but skating, ice skating. And it's just an attraction. It's something that people want to see because it's beautiful. And there's so many ways that you can put businesses along the water. People love eating dinner next to the lake, eating dinner next to the river, and like seeing the beautiful waterways. We want to connect the streets to the waterfronts so better access and eyes on the water. I said eyes on the street earlier. We visited Ox Creek and saw that there is a lot of dumping. It's basically been used as a dumping ground for people because there's no one looking, because there's no one paying attention. And if there was access to the waterways, if more people were around, if more people saw them and interacted with them regularly, then there wouldn't be as much dumping because people would know that they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Moving on now to mobility. We want the residents of Benton Harbor want to be able to access the rest of Benton Harbor and the areas around it and the resources that they need. Jobs, shopping, homes, public services, health, all of those things. And you want to also be, and so you need a complete and smart transportation system that thinks about what the people need. So what we do want to do is do a transportation study to understand where people need to go, what times they need to go there, what days they have peak service. We still need to do more research and figure out and talk to the people of Benton Harbor about where they need to be, what the best type of public transportation options would be for them. But what we do know is that the mobility system should be safe, efficient, equitable, affordable, and sustainable. You should not be worried that you're going to get hit by a car. You shouldn't be worried that if you let your child walk to the next down the street, that they're going to have to be worried about people going too fast down the street. You want it to be efficient. If you need to go to the grocery store, you don't want to have to take the bus all the way around the city to do that. You want to be able to get there in the most efficient way possible and then be able to get back to your house so that you can take care of the other stuff that you need to do on your days off. And your time is important. We know that. We want it to be equitable. We want it to serve everyone in the city, and we want it to serve the people who need it the most. Not everyone has a car. Some people are able to move around the city easier than others, and we need to help, and we need to make it available, transportation available to the people who need it most. We need to be affordable for that exact same reason. And we need it to be sustainable. We need to think about fossil fuels. We need to think about electricity. We need to think about what we're using. And we also need to be able to pay for itself economically. We need it to be economically sustainable. So building community through equitable mobility. We want, as in terms of safety, we want safe neighborhood streets. We want the streets to be fixed. That was one of the biggest things we've heard all week, is that the streets need repair, and the sidewalks need repair. There need to be more crosswalks, so that with lights, so that so that the cars know to slow down when people are crossing the street. The streets used to be built for cars to be able to move the most efficiently. They didn't really consider what people were doing when they were crossing them. And so we need to build them so that they consider people. We need to reconnect street grids. There used to be a lot more connectivity between the streets, and now, especially in parts of downtown, there are areas that are no longer connected to downtown that used to be connected to downtown. So it used to be a lot easier to get there on foot, walking easily than it is now. continuing, we want to design the roads for safety. There are creative ways to do that. If you put art on the streets, people will, when you have a crosswalk coming up, people will slow down because they want to see the art and because they have some indication that they need to slow down. I can tell that there's people around, there's activity, so that they need to slow up. And we need trails for non-motorized and non-automobile things. So non-motorized bikes, scooters, like push scooters, walking, skateboards, all of that, and people with strollers, people on wheels, people in wheelchairs, and then just non-automobile access, and that needs to be separated from the non-motorized, presumably, or it needs to be distinct from that. That there's motor scooters, there's people who ride e-bikes, there's people who ride mopeds, Vespas, and there's people who ride motorcycles. Those people need to be on the streets, to be clear, but there are just different methods of activity, motion other than cars that we need to take into consideration because there's lots of ways people get around. And we need to design the network for the people continuing. As I said earlier, we want to figure out where people go when they go there. Is there a school? We know that Lake Michigan College has a school schedule that doesn't necessarily line up with when the bus gets there. Are there specific shift changes that are slowing down the process of when people need to get where they need to go? There needs to be access to bikes, and bikes need to be safely be able to get where they need to go. It wouldn't be that hard to bike around the city distance-wise. It's only a few miles across in each direction, but it's not necessarily safe for someone on a bike exposed to other cars to take their bike wherever they need to go right now. As I was saying earlier, frequent crosswalks and safer sidewalks to make sure that everyone is able to walk where they need to be. If they're just going a half a mile, they shouldn't have to worry about needing to where they're going to be able to cross the street without worrying about someone speeding down and hitting them. And then parking. We need to know how much parking is necessary. We know there are some areas where there's not any parking or not enough parking for events and to encourage people to come out, especially from outside of the city. For people within, I remember hearing there are certain parks that don't have any parking, so people just park on the streets. We also don't need that necessarily. There are other areas, maybe potentially downtown, that already have plenty of parking, and we want to encourage people to find other ways to get downtown. And we want to be able to support local businesses by having enough parking wherever they are. So, yeah. Okay, that was mobility. We're moving on to parks now. Related to waterways, but there are a lot of beautiful, amazing, large there's so many parks and so much land dedicated to park space in Benton Harbor. It's beautiful. Every neighborhood tends to be kind of defined by what park you're closest to. So we want to maintain, enhance, and expand on these beautiful parks. These parks are an asset to the city of Benton Harbor. They are really something special about Benton Harbor, and we need to make sure that that we improve them, and that they stay improved, that they stay clean and stay strong, and then potentially expand on them, connect them to each other, so that people can get from one park to another, explore the city, and see what the city has to offer. And potentially for a lot of the parks, especially the bigger ones, the ones that have a lot of attractions, to be able to encourage visitors from outside the city to come and visit your beautiful parks, because some of your parks have amazing historical landmarks. They're amazing community spaces. They're a great place for people to gather and enjoy nature at all times of year. Parks are neighborhood anchors, as I said. They are access to green space, and they are a place where people develop neighborhood culture. If they are gathering spaces, then they are places that people connect with each other. They are amenities. They are a place to exercise. They are a place to enjoy. They are a place to relax. And we heard that we want to rotate programming throughout the neighborhoods and throughout the different parks so that everyone can access really fun activities, really interesting things in their own neighborhood park. And then if they want, they can go to another park to see that and visit another part of the city, and so that we can have more interconnectivity between the neighborhoods. In terms of what people want the parks to look like and be like, we want to have more people visiting the parks so that the parks are a safe place to be. We want to utilize the natural space, the beautiful Ox Creek, all of the nature, the trees, the forested area. the wetlands, the meadows, all of the nature that is there, the animals that can be there, the birds. Vacant spaces that are just sitting unoccupied, that are green or that have a lot of potential, we want to upgrade those. Put in benches, put in trash cans so that they don't collect junk. Just upgrade those vacant spaces and involve residents in these amenity investments. There's been discussions of creating ways that there's a community foundation that can potentially fund parks, or that people know that like their dollars are going into creating beautiful safe spaces for them to be able to commune. Make sure that there's plenty of access to those parks. As we were saying earlier, if we have beautiful parks, we want everybody to be able to enjoy them and get to them. That comes with mobility and the buses being able to get to those parks, or there being trails to those parks. And partnering with the schools. A lot of the schools have a lot of park space and open space nearby them, so that the schools can use the parks as a resource, and the parks can use the schools as a resource. Kids, ecological and environmental education is a great tool. Getting kids out in nature and showing them what you're teaching them when you're teaching science and when you're teaching math and when you're teaching English, and showing people showing children outdoor spaces and engaging with them has been proven to be an amazing educational tool. So the schools should be working with the parks more in order to help the kids and educate kids and just be a tool for education. And I believe this is the final topic. This kind of fills in the gaps, everything else. Best life. Tying everything together. Benton Harbor residents will live in complete neighborhoods with thoughtful and equitable access to diverse housing opportunities, healthy food, local services, civic spaces, recreation, and shopping. Benton Harbor legacy residents, people who have been living here for decades, will benefit from future economic growth and prosperity. Urgent consideration will be given in decision-making processes to protect vulnerable residents from impacts of unplanned and unmitigated economic development. We're not just letting folks come in and build whatever they want and spend their money however they like and change the city however they feel like it. That's not, that the point of this plan, and I want to drive this home, the point of this plan is to make sure that the people of Benton Harbor have control over how the city grows and changes. And how and as that happens, new people will come in and the city will grow and the population will mix, and there will be new development, and we don't want that to be unmitigated. We don't want that to be unplanned. We don't want that to be out of control and out of our hands and out of the people of Benton Harbor's hands. So how are we going to do that? We want to create a high quality of life. This is our first priority, is creating a high quality of life for the people of Benton Harbor. Have quality, affordable, and attainable homes. We want to do a study to understand the quality of the homes in Benton Harbor, who owns them, incomes, rent, how to support people that want to own homes, that want to be able to own homes, how they can go about doing that, how they can go about attaining those homes. Because that's a path to personal and community wealth building. As the people of Benton Harbor grow their wealth, they are able to contribute to their communities more and more, as they are able to support themselves more and more. Equitable mobility, as I said before, people being able to move around and access the city. Universal communications technology. The world is, as we all know, a very electric place. If you're watching this stream or watching this recording, you know you need internet, you need Wi-Fi, you need electricity to be able to access and grow and be part of the rest of the world. So we want to look into universal communications access. Universal Wi-Fi is what that means. Wi-Fi for making sure everybody has access to Wi-Fi. Schools, using the schools as community anchors. In addition to the parks being community anchors, the schools are also community anchors. People can identify based on what school they went to, and that's where people gather. People, at least that families gather, and those are beautiful spaces. Those buildings are old and they have a lot of history to them, and we want to make sure that we invest in them so that they can be utilized as strong community anchors, places that people can go, places that people can shelter, places that people can meet, especially in the wintertime when you can't go to the park, you have a community meeting, have a community meeting at a school. Supporting more recreation, green space, and water to improve people's quality of life. And improving, we talked a lot about, it gets into the weeds, but fair and transparent taxes and public investments. The more people that come into Benton Harbor, the lower the tax burden will be on the average citizen. This city was built to sustain 20,000 people, and it is now supporting 10,000 people. And there's just too much city for the number of people that there are. So we need more people to come in. But as I was saying before, we are planning so that that doesn't happen out of control. That doesn't happen in an out of control fashion. We know a lot now as planners. We have seen in other cities a history of what has happened in other cities when new people come in, and we know how we can avoid the mistakes that other cities and communities have made when they just let folks come in and make decisions without consulting the people who are already living there. Thank you for all of the amazing ideas, for the people who participated in our work this week. And this is just the beginning of a full year of planning to create a master plan. Remember to keep looking at the website for updates and everything. And I will let Paul come up for maybe closing remarks, or be Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Maya. Commissioner Reed will make our closing remarks.
This week has been very informative. We gathered quite a bit of information from the citizens that participated. We're looking forward, as we move toward our future, to include as many additional citizens and their concerns. What we're looking for now is to get out into the neighborhoods. We want to hear from you. We want to come to where you are. Let us know where we can meet. Anytime you get a number of people who are ready, let us know. We'll bring our whole Local Pony Show to you to hear what you have to say. Young people, this is your city. You have to help us put it together for your future. Does your environment create you, or will you create your environment? Your participation will help us to determine exactly where we go in the future. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you for your interest and your concern.
All right. And with that, we're going to adjourn planning week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.